Hello, everybody. My name is Bryce Paden, and this is my case study, When Ethics and Policies Collide. Summarizing the case, Richard Inman is the first-year assistant principal at Rocket Junior High. He has worked hard to establish a relationship with kids on the south side of town where he is from. The leader of the south side group is James, a 15-year-old boy who is muscular and has tattoos. A teacher reported an incident that James was seen giving another student something and suspected drugs. David Ramos is an honor student and a standout trombonist, and he was the other student in question. It ended up being brass knuckles, and even though James said it was his fault, per policy, both students should be expelled. When doing the paperwork, Richard threw David's page away because he did not want to throw his bright future away for a mistake such as this. Richard got a call from the director of secondary education to follow up and follow through with his expulsion papers for David, or it would be noted in his personal file that he had refused. Legal and ethical issues. Legal, obviously felony weapons charge for both boys. We'll be coming to them. James may be into more trouble for bullying or forcing David into holding the weapon. Ethically, chose to break school policy and not report David up to this point, and trying to decide what is best for each individual student. Synthesize what has happened. Richard Inman, the assistant principal at Rocker Junior High, was working to build a good relationship with the South Side students, and one of them, James, was caught handing brass knuckles to David Ramos, where policy states that both students should be expelled, and Richard is having a hard time deciding on whether to expel David Ramos since he is innocent in the most part in the case, and James had admitted it was all of his fault. Synthesizing the facts, notable people, Richard Inman, the assistant principal at Rocket Junior High School, James, the Southside native, where Richard is also from, and he's said to be muscular and bigger and have lots of tattoos. David Ramos, respected student with a clean record and a really good trombonist. David's mother, she is not very happy because she feels as David was innocent in this and was bullied into having the weapon. James's mother wasn't surprised at all what had happened. She had mentioned that, leave him there, maybe he'll learn. It just seems like she had been fed up with him up to this point. The police officer, he had to escort the boys back into the principal's office and ended up handcuffing David, as well as the director of secondary education, who was the one that called Mr. Inman and threatened to report him if David's report was not filled out for his expulsion. Place. No specific location or conditions were given. Unsure on rural versus suburban, but obviously it's kind of leaning towards suburban. Demographics must play a part since they're referencing Southsiders in regards to James. But nothing is mentioned on David's location or where he is from. The program is Rocket Junior High School. Enrollment would be 900 students, so relatively large. Students will be sent to the district's Disciplinary Alternative Education Program, the DAEP, and no other information on public versus private, but in my opinion, it's probably a public school. Review and prioritize. Could the decision be damaging to the stakeholders? Yes, can be damaging to David, James, depending on the outcome. Obviously, they will depend on those. What individuals have stake in the outcome? Obviously, James and David. If their charges will happen or stick to them, and or what happens to them in the school. Are they going to be reinstated, or are they definitely going to be out indefinitely, or what's going to happen with them school related. Richard, okay, Mr. Inman, depending on what he decides to do, will have stake in this outcome. The mother of the boys, Like I mentioned, James's mother did not seem to care, but I think she would care if she understood Mr. Inman's relationship with him, and that he did care for him and has tried to build that relationship to avoid things like this from happening. On the other hand, David's mother is very, very concerned, and she will be concerned of the outcome of what happens, because this is her baby, and she will, he'll have to face the consequences of the actions of taking the brass knuckles. And other teachers, staff, administrators, I feel like need to be concerned about the weapon, being on campus, and if there needs to be different policies that are, that need to be changed in their handbooks. Have all the relevant stakeholders be consulted? I do not think so. The other principal needs to be in part of this. With something as big as this, the other assistant principal or the head principal needs to be involved in this, and other administration probably should be as well. Can I learn more about the situation? Yeah. Do these incidents happen quite often? Is this a regular thing for weapons to be in school? What are the ramifications if Richards decides not to file the paperwork on David? And would there be any gray area to discuss David with administration, or is it just cut and dry? This is the policy. Sorry about it. Do I know enough to make a decision? Yes, I think there's enough evidence to ethically make a decision. Some of my options, I picked had three options. Option number one would just be to not do anything, don't fill out the paperwork on David, and allow him back into the school. Some consequences would, I could lose my job. Richard could lose his job depending on the punishment from the administration. Staff or community members might second guess what is going on if the policy is clear and it's not followed, and they may just lose respect. Option number two, you don't write up David and immediately talk to the other principal and other administration to explain to them what had gone on and the dilemma at hand regarding David, and discuss policy change if possible. Consequence of this just could be, you lose respect from the other principal administrations for not dealing with the issue. And option number three, expel both boys and send them to the AEP like the policy clearly states. Consequence of these, David's parent will be upset, could be damaging to David's future, and most likely policy won't be looked at or changed. Evaluating these options, pros for option number one, David will remain in school for the time being. That's not being said that even if Richard didn't fill out the paperwork, doesn't mean that the director won't call the other principal, and it will happen anyways, and he'll end up there anyways. That could happen. Cons will be written up and could lose the job. Richard not following direct orders. Could lose respect from the stakeholders, like I mentioned. Option number two, pros, there'd be more input than just Richard. Anytime you have more than one head thinking about things, especially when they're on the same level, if you're talking two principals, that's not trying to get a teacher's point of view on a decision that a higher up should make. That is somebody on the same level as you, and I think that really could help. Policy could change. You could have good discussion, and policy could change. And David might even be reinstated to the school. Cons, others might stick to policy and send David away anyways. Policy could stay the same, and you could lose respect from administration, like I had mentioned multiple times. Option number three, pro, Richard will not be written up because he's simply following procedure as it follows. Ethical decision that makes Richard follow the rules as like I mentioned. He's just following the rules, doing what he's supposed to do, and that is an ethical decision. Cons, David's mother will still be upset. David will be sent to the DAEP, and most likely policy won't be looked at. The option that I chose, I recommend option number two, to not write up David for the time being, and communicate the issue with, at minimum, the other principal, but most likely with superintendent if you can, to get more input on making an ethical decision that's best for the students involved. That's our goal as teachers, is to put the students' well-being first, and that is what this option does, in my opinion. It gives a chance for David to be given some leniency, even if he still needs to be punished. And I think there should be a punishment, maybe just not that, maybe in the regular school setting. As for James, he'll be facing his consequences, but there needs to be a rehabilitation procedure for inclusion back into the school setting, in my opinion, because he has shown growth. Mr. Inman can attest to that through their relationships that they've built. And lastly, implementing my decision, I would set a meeting with the other principal, gauge their thoughts, see what's going on, what they think, call in a superintendent if neither feel comfortable making a decision, communicate to them the whole situation, since I would be communicating that, or Richard would be communicating that, since he has the facts of the matter. Next, I think I'll advocate for David and discuss the implications of the decision. If they agree, might be best to reach out to the superintendent about policy change and inform them of what's going on. If not, if they disagree and they feel both students should be written up, then that makes my decision pretty easy, and just do it. I think either way, David's mother needs to be notified of the plan of action. She needs to be in communication of this is why we did or didn't do our decision. And lastly, I think teachers need to be aware of what's going on and encourage to model ethical behavior and mentor students to help avoid these issues in the future. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what this class is about, is modeling our ethical behavior and our decision making and what we do every single day. And I think that needs to be in the forefront of what's going on, because Mr. Inman can, like I said, he can attest to the growth that a student from the South Side had made, in this case study. So, and I think that's definitely something that I'll take away from this. And it was really good. Thank you all for listening, and enjoy the rest of your summer.